Hi, welcome to Essential Photoshop Elements Tips. I'm Rick Peterson from EssentialPhotoshopElements.com. I've put together 20 of the most useful tips I could think of for users at all levels of experience. That means if you're just getting started with Photoshop Elements, you don't need to be familiar with things like layers or what masking is all about. I broke each video down into 5 tips per video, and will send you the next video a few days later so you don't get overwhelmed. It will give you a chance to get used to using 5 tips at a time. I also made a short video demonstrating the use of each tip right inside of Elements, so you can see exactly how it works. I'm using Elements 9 for the demos, but most of these tips will work with other versions of Elements as well. And finally, I will include a PDF cheat sheet with each video so you can print it out to have handy when you're using Elements. So let's get going with the first tip. Tip number 1 is a great way to free up more space for the photo you're working on. So here it is. Hide everything except your photo and the menu bar by pressing the Tab key. And as kind of a bonus to tip number 1, hold down the Shift key as you press Tab, and the toolbox and options bar will stay. Let's see what this looks like inside of Elements. Here we are in the full edit mode inside of Photoshop Elements. You can see we have our panels over on the right side, and the project bin at the bottom, and the toolbox is over on the left with the options bar at the top. Now I'm going to press the Tab key. Here we go, Tab, and everything gets hidden, and you're left with just your photo in the workspace and your menu bar at the top. It also keeps the shortcuts bar. And then you just press Tab again, which I'll do now, to bring everything back. This is great and gives you more space to see and work on your photo. But what if you want to grab a different tool to work with? You no longer have access to the toolbox. So I'll press Tab again, and you can see everything goes away. You could press Tab again to bring everything back and then choose the tool you need and then press Tab again. But there's a way to keep the toolbox from going away in the first place. So let me bring everything back again. When you press Tab to hide everything, hold down the Shift key and your toolbox will also stay so that you can have access to all the tools. So let me do that for you. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and press Tab, and you can see everything went away like before except for the toolbox. And then just press Tab again to bring everything back. Let's move on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is change any tool to the hand tool to quickly move around your photo. All you do is hold down the space bar as you click and drag. Let me show you what I mean inside of Elements. Again, we're in the full edit mode. Let's say I want to blur some of the background around our subject. I would choose the blur tool, which is right here, and then start blurring some of these roses. Now I want to move to the area above his head. Instead of moving over to the scroll bar, all I have to do is hold down the space bar, and you can see my cursor turns into the hand tool. Now I can just click and drag while holding down the space bar. When I get to the area I want, I just let go. And now my cursor turns back into the blur tool, and I can continue blurring up there. Let's go on to tip number 3. Tip number 3 is change any tool into the zoom tool by holding down the Control key on a Windows PC or the Command key on a Mac while pressing the spacebar down. Add the Alt key on a PC or the Option key on a Mac to zoom out. Let's go over to Elements to see how that looks. Okay, now let's say I want to zoom in on my subject's face to do some retouching. Right now you can see that the cursor looks like a cross with arrow tips on each end. That represents my currently active tool, which is the Move tool. Now if I hold down the Command key and spacebar on my Mac, that would be Control spacebar on a PC, my cursor changes into a magnifying glass with a plus sign in it, indicating it is ready to zoom in. Now I can either click over the area I want to zoom in on, or I can click and drag over that area. Now if I add the Option key, that would be the Alt key on a Windows PC, you can see the cursor changes into a magnifying glass with a minus sign in it. Now if I click while holding those three keys, we zoom out each time we click. So I'll click once and again, and you can see it zooms out each time. Now let's go to tip number 4. Tip number 4 is fit your whole photo in your monitor by pressing Control or Command plus 0. I'll show you how that looks in Elements. Right now I'm at 100% view, as you can see down here in the lower left corner. I know there is more of the photo not showing because I have scroll bars both on the right side here and on the bottom of the photo. Now if I press Control on Windows or Command on a Mac and 0, the photo resizes to fit the whole thing in my screen. So I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to hold Command 0, and you can see that now I can see the whole photo fit inside of my screen. And now on to our last tip. Our last tip is simply to use keyboard shortcuts to quickly get to the tools you use most often. Depending on what you use Elements for, you'll notice that you tend to use certain tools more than others. Get to know the keyboard shortcuts for your favorite tools, and it will speed up your use of Elements. Each tool has a shortcut letter assigned to it. Some of them make sense, like Z for the Zoom tool. Others, like P for the Straighten tool, not so much. You can find the shortcut for any tool by hovering your cursor over the tool. Let me go into Elements and show you that. And I'll hover my cursor over the Hand tool, and you can see the name of the Hand tool appears, and then over to the right, and it goes away after a while, so I'll go back over there. Over on the right you can see the letter H in parentheses. So that means if I press the letter H, which I will do now, that the Hand tool becomes the active tool. Also, by getting used to using keyboard shortcuts for your favorite tools, you'll be primed to use other shortcuts in Photoshop to perform certain functions which will increase your efficiency even more. But for now, print out the PDF cheat sheet for these 5 tips and practice them. Watch for the next 5 tips to arrive in your inbox in a few days. Until next time, I'm Rick Peterson saying take care.